Describe your deal-making style.
Modest.
Billionaire investor and philanthropist David Rubenstein.
With David.
David Rubenstein, the co-chairman of the Carlyle Group.
He's a renaissance man, and now his latest challenge is the Baltimore Orioles, which is one of the true 5 or 6 iconic franchises in sports. What's more important, your gut instincts or data?
Instinct. When you own a team, people treat you with much greater respect than maybe you would have expected.
The highest calling of mankind, I've often thought, was private equity.
No matter what you accomplish, you realize you're just one person out of 8 billion on the face of the earth.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. I hope you are surviving the afternoon, but what a featured speaker we have here, David. Now, the way this interview went, I got a call, hey, can you interview David about his new book, Highest Calling, fantastic book on the presidency, what it's meant, and I do want to ask him some questions about this. He's trying to flip it, talk about my book, which came out today, so we're going to go back and forth with a little jujitsu. I guess I'm going to lose that, but I want to start out because, David, this is a personal honor for me. You obviously a legend in the investing world, and then what you've done to preserve our cultural icons in the United States is amazing. Your books are great, I've read them all. And then I turn on the TV around Christmas, and he's putting the Kennedy Center medal on the Grateful Dead. So, I mean, the guy's done it all. Let's.
You don't look like a deadhead to me. Are you a deadhead?
Yeah, I love the Grateful Dead. It's yeah. Well, don't get. See, he's flipping it already here. I didn't even get one question out. You got to help me with this. All right. Now, I want to start with the book as a way of getting into economics and politics. So, one of the things that you write about so elegantly is kind of the U.S. has had different eras. Say the progressive era. Then the Reagan era. What kind of an era do you think we're in now, and how does it shape your view on the economy?
Well, first, Trump is sui generis, as the lawyers say, unique. And we haven't seen anything like this, not since FDR was really running the United States during World War II and through the Depression have we seen any one person have that much power. He effectively has control of the legislature, the executive branch, and he appointed 3 people who are already on the court. So he's got an enormous amount of power, and probably will have it at least for 2 years. We lose, presidents on their first midterm election usually lose 25 seats in the House. Clinton actually lost 56. I think Obama lost 62. So if that pattern were to continue, the House could go Democratic in 2 years. But for the next 2 years, Trump can get pretty much what he wants through the Congress, and it's unique. You know, I lived through the era when Richard Nixon won 49 states, Ronald Reagan won 49 states against my former boss, Jimmy Carter. While Trump didn't win by that kind of margin, he has much more power than Nixon and or Reagan ever had. So it's a very unique situation. Now, he's being criticized in Washington now and around the country, to some extent in the world, for doing something very unique. He's honoring his campaign promises. You know, a politician that honors his promises, this is very disconcerting to people. So that's what he's doing. Everything he said he's doing, he pretty much said he was going to do in the campaign. He's doing it now. Now, some of them things he didn't quite mention, but I think he's got a lot of power to do a lot what he wants right now. Time will tell whether it works out. We'll measure this by whether the economy does well, whether inflation recedes, whether our trade deficit goes down, as he would like to do, and whether you can keep out of wars. You know, presidents are popular when they have peace and prosperity. If you can keep the peace and you've got prosperity, those presidents are doing well. If you get into wars and they're never going to be very popular and your economy goes bad, no matter how personable you are or how much your support was in the country, you're not going to be that popular.
Okay, and so, you know, another presidential question, because at 27, you were the youngest person in the Carter White House. Carter was kind of famous because he thought he didn't need a chief of staff. A lot is being made of Susie Wiles, first female chief of staff. Any thoughts on chief of staff, how important it is, or the things we should look for?
Well, the chief of staff was invented really under Dwight Eisenhower, who had chiefs of staff when he was general, and he used that and he gave that title to his chief of staff, who was a former governor of New Hampshire. Some presidents haven't used it. President Kennedy didn't want a chief of staff. Lyndon Johnson really didn't use a chief of staff. And the model that Carter initially had was not to have a chief of staff. When you don't have a chief of staff, that means anybody senior can walk in the Oval Office almost any time and talk to you. And it's not screened. And the result is you have a lot of chaos. Carter didn't want anybody controlling him, and he didn't want a chief of staff. But when the administration didn't do that well in the first year and a half, he then went to a chief of staff model. The problem was the chief of staff didn't want to be chief of staff, so he really wasn't that good at that. And so Carter had lots of problems. I would say it's interesting how Carter went back and forth in Washington. When he came to Washington, he was a great hero. He had defeated the Nixon-Ford legacy, and the Watergate era was behind us, and he was very popular. But then he tried to do so many things that were not that popular that ultimately he lost in a humiliating loss to Ronald Reagan. So he left Washington humiliated. Then he came back 44 years later as a hero, in effect. He had 44 years to fix his reputation, and he did by winning the Nobel Peace Prize, eliminating guinea worm, river blindness, election monitoring, and all those other things. So, I think today his legacy is much better. Just like Truman left the White House very unpopular, he came back much more popular. Carter today is viewed much better than he was when he left office, not so much because of what he did in the office, but more because of what he did after he was president.
Got it. Okay, now in the book here, one of the subtle themes that you touch on is presidents and their fathers, kind of like the relationship they had. And my question kind of is, when you're looking at investment managers and investments, do you think about psychology and things like that? How does that play in?
Well, I should ask you. You pick managers more than me, so what do you look for?
What did Warren Buffett say? Smarts, hardworking, and then, of course, character. But I don't do a psychological profile.
Well, as everybody knows, there was an investment manager, the Tiger, organization had detailed kind of psychological tests to hire employees, and if you got past the test and you get money and did reasonably well, then you could keep going at Tiger. And Julian Robertson did a really good job with those kind of tests. I am not picking managers as much as I'm picking people, and when I'm picking people, I'm looking for people who are. And I'm not talking about famous people like Jim Baker or George Bush. They come in for different reasons. You want somebody who's reasonably intelligent, but not a genius. Geniuses are hard to manage. Somebody willing to work hard, but not so obsessively so that they basically lose perspective on life. Want somebody that knows how to get along with other people. Because the key to the investment business, among other things, is convincing other people to do what you want and persuading them of your own views. So you want people that can get along with other people and know how to persuade. The ability to persuade is one of the key things in life. All of life is persuading your partner, your spouse, your children, whoever it might be, that to do what you want. And to do that, you have to learn how to write reasonably well, talk reasonably well, and be a role model in some ways. So I'm looking for people that know how to get along with other people. I'm looking for people that are ethical. I don't want people that are going to cut ethical shortcuts. I also am looking for people that have some perspective on life and they don't want to just work 100 hours a week and not worry about what they're going to do with the money they make, because you want people that have a balanced life and also want to give back to society. So there are many different things I'm looking for when I hire people, and sometimes they've worked out well. I've hired Jay Powell when he was leaving government. I thought he was pretty good, and I didn't know what happened to him. I don't know where he is now, but he was good. And then I've hired a lot of people that I thought did spectacular jobs at Carlyle. Glenn Youngkin I hired out of McKinsey. He's in politics now, I think governor of Virginia, maybe be president of the United States someday. So sometimes I've made some hiring mistakes, and I won't go through those, but generally it's, I get more of them right than wrong, I would say.
I think you have a fantastic record of getting them more right than wrong. But it's fine. You don't have to tell us mistakes, but maybe I think one thing that people might be interested in are there investments that you still wake up at night and say, oh man, I really missed that one?
Yeah, every night, every day. I mean, maybe because I'm always looking back at the mistakes I made, things I could have done better. So the story that people probably have heard is, when Mark Zuckerberg was in college, my now son-in-law told me about this company. It was a dating service. And I told him we'd never get anywhere. And they were looking for $30,000. And I said, no, that's a waste of $30,000. And now the guy who did it, his classmate, has about $30 billion of Facebook stock. That was a mistake. When Jeff Bezos was starting his company, he came to us to use a bibliography of books we had for the company Amazon. And we rented it to him for $100,000 a year, as opposed to the 20% of the stock of his company he was starting that we turned down. Later, I went back to get the 20% stock, and he said he didn't need me so much anymore, but he gave us 1% of the company, which we then sold right away anyway. So I've made a lot of mistakes, but you know, you never know. One time, a guy shows up in my office, long hair, his sandals, jeans. He looked like he was just out of college, maybe, or maybe still in college, and he was going to start a new company to navigate the internet. And I said, well, what is the internet, and why would I want to navigate it? And he was with a guy named James Clark, who used to be the head of Silicon Graphics. They were going to start Netscape, and he wanted a $125 million valuation for a company that had no revenue, no office, and anything. I said, look, we're pretty smart here. $125 million, that's ridiculous. He came back a couple weeks later, he said, you're right, $75 million valuation. We said, it's still too high. So we walked away from it. And Netscape was later bought from AOL for about $4.5 billion. So I've made a lot of mistakes, and I think about the mistakes more than the successes. I just, maybe because I'm Jewish, I can't avoid thinking about the things I should have done. A lot of guilt.
Well, you know, that guilt seems to come out in a lot of giving.
Well, look, I came from very modest circumstance. My father and mother did not have a high school degree. They were, you know, blue-collar workers. I was their only child. When I got lucky and started making money, I could say, okay, what am I going to do with it? I can build a monument to myself. I could give it all to my children and spoil them, or I could give it away, and then we give it away to people that are good causes. I could give it away at my will, which a lot of people do. Most people give away most of their money when they die, and I wasn't sure I'd be at a place where I could see where it was being used after I died, so I wanted to give it away while I was alive. And Bill Gates called me around that time and said he was starting the Giving Pledge. There were 40 of us who signed at the beginning, where you're going to commit to give away half your money. It's not, it's a voluntary thing, so if you don't do it, we don't disinter you if you die without having given away your money. But it's one of the pleasures of my life is giving away money, and I've given away a lot to remind people the history and heritage of my country.
You know, in all the things you've done, is there something where you gave or got involved in that, you know, you didn't think it was going to give you as much pleasure as it did?
Well, one time I became the chairman of the Smithsonian, and somebody came in to me and said, we got a problem. The sponsor of the pandas in the National Zoo not going to support it anymore. We're going to have to give the pandas back. I didn't realize we were sponsoring them, but so I said I'd put up some money to keep the pandas there, and it turns out the pandas are the most popular people in Washington, or most popular creatures in Washington. We now have new pandas there, and for some reason, people are obsessed with pandas. We have hundreds of thousands of people who watch the pandas movements every day, and I can't figure out why they're so obsessed with it, but that's something that I've gotten some pleasure with. But also, when I buy historic documents and give them to the United States, when I bought the only copy in private hands of the Magna Carta, that was something that I wanted to have preserved in the United States. It's now in the National Archives, or with the Washington Monument had its earthquake damage, and I put up the money to fix it. People were amazed that a private citizen would fix the Washington Monument, but you know, those kind of things have been good, and I enjoyed them. But you know, my parents didn't really understand exactly what I was doing, and they weren't that sophisticated. So one time, Carlyle bought Dunkin' Donuts, and I gave my mother some free coupons to get coffee. And she used to go to Dunkin' Donuts every morning, and she would go in and say, guess what, I got a free coupon for coffee, and my son owns Dunkin' Donuts. And of course, the woman behind the cash register said, sure, lady, just here's your coffee. So my mother was actually proud that she had free coupons for Dunkin' Donuts, but you know, what do you really want to do with your life? What you want to do, if you're, I think, lucky, is please your parents that they did something by creating you, and that you can thank them, in effect, by doing something good with your life and useful. And then you want to create children, if you want to have children, that done something useful, that you can say, look what I created. I created these children, look what they've done for the world. So I think those are the greatest pleasures you can get, is you know, doing something to please your parents and make them proud, and then also doing something for your children that makes them have a happy life, and that you can take pride in what they did.
Wow, that's, I don't think any of us could hope for more than that. It just shows what a small person I am, because I was thinking about the panda exhibit, and you know, I knew you as an investor, and then I showing up at these monuments, you know, like I show up at Jefferson's place, and it's the David Rubenstein Visitor Center, David M. Rubenstein Visitor Center, and the panda thing, and I was trying to think, like, how smart is this guy? The ROI on the name recognition of all these monuments. Well, but now I know you, and you know. Well,
I put it this way: there are the very famous people who say that the best philanthropy is done anonymously, and there's nothing wrong with it. And do give some things away anonymously, but I have agreed to put my name on these things, mostly because, not because my mother would be happier, but I want to show people that somebody from modest circumstances can rise up in the United States and actually do something that by giving back to society and encourage other people to do the same things. There are many people who are very wealthy who just don't believe in philanthropy. They want to just keep all the money and die with it, and that's their right. But I just want to encourage people to give back, and by putting my name on something and people realize I came from modest circumstances, be able to inspire them. So let me ask you a question now. Okay, so you run UBS's wealth division, is that right? Private wealth division?
I am the chief investment officer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So who is the greatest investor you've ever observed or that you would give money to? If you could give money to any one investor, one person, is it Warren Buffett, or who would you give money to?
Wow. So, I mean, I think that putting aside all the moonshots, you know, and things that I missed, I think that for me, it's always been Charlie Munger, because, you know, he took what Buffett did and refined it, I think, and made it much more durable. And I like that somebody who can take something and improve it.
Now, your new book, which we have right here, which I highly recommend, says, among other things, that the biggest change in the investment world in recent decades is the enormous influence of government spending on the economy. So can you explain in one or two paragraphs what you mean?
Yeah. So first, we all know that after the Great Recession, the Fed started building up its balance sheet. We got the TARP. We got the recapitalization of the banks. But then I was sitting around after COVID, and everything felt kind of different, but I was trying to think about it in one way. And then I saw this chart that U.S. government spending was at the same level, spending versus GDP, as it was during World War II. And, you know, so we say to clients, well, you think World War II was a time to review your portfolio and think about your asset allocation, and that worked, and that got me, you know, how it is with a book. It gets you down a rabbit hole.
All right, so you pick up the newspapers that you use today and you say, wait a second, some little software company in China has changed the investment climate all over the world by staggering amounts. So in your view, does that mean all the money going into artificial intelligence in the United States and Europe has been wasted, or should we not worry about it and just see it as a one-day blip?
So the way that I look at this is digitalization, AI, is a big problem. We had Jake Sullivan, the outgoing national security advisor, said this is like the Manhattan Project, the US versus China. The only difference, well, one of the big differences is that it's not being done in secret and it's not in control of the government. It's out in the private world, so it's potentially even more scary. But big money, big problems equal big money. And we want to follow the money, and we want to be buying what the government is buying. So if anything, it's on everybody's radar. This is a national security issue now, and so the big problem is bigger, the big money is bigger, and there's going to be more to buy because the government is going to be buying more.
Okay, so this is a global alts conference. So what is the best alternative investment category to put your money in? Buyouts, venture capital, growth capital, private credit, Carlyle, what would you say?
Carlyle is amazing, but of course my answer to that, I wouldn't have this job if I didn't say, David, yes. You know, I mean,
it's all good.
Look, partly I hope you read the book, because I wrote the book kind of to be, when clients ask me this or that, it's like, read the book. And what does the book say? Diversify, I mean, make your money, trade, you know, I ran a hedge fund, that's what I did for a while. But then you've got to hold on to your money, and diversification is part of that. As you all know, alternatives play a key role in that diversification today, getting beyond public equities. Hedge funds had a great year last year, helping diversify portfolios. So that's a key message of what we tried to.
Suppose I came to you and I'd say, I just sold my company, I have $1 billion, I'm 60 years old, I don't want to work anymore, I'm going to give you the $1 billion to manage, don't lose the money. What kind of rate of return are you going to get for me in a situation where I don't want to lose any capital, I get a respectable rate of return. What's a respectable rate of return that UBS is going to get for me?
Current interest rate environment, starting with a 60-40 portfolio, say around 6-7% is what we would shoot for in a global portfolio.
Net?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Net. Okay. Suppose I say I want only alternatives. I have $1 billion. I don't care about 60-40. I don't care about stocks. I don't want bonds. Just put it in alternatives because that's a much better thing to put in. What kind of return do you think I should get if I do only alternatives?
Well, you better get higher, higher
than 6 or 7.
Yeah. So I think say we shoot for I would say equities now we think 7-8%. So I hope you're getting 8-9% minimum.
Hey, let's say some people would say the greatest invention in the world was the wheel. Some people say fire. But what about carried interest? Suppose there was no 20% rule. And the people that were managing private equity money and all the alternatives, they were just getting a fee, just like regular long-only managers. Do you think the industry would have gone this way? Or do you think that basically they're getting the modest returns if there wasn't a 20% rule?
I'm not trying to be, I don't want to be political here, and this obviously gets into political stuff. But look, the people that are attracted to finance, they're doing it to make money. And looking back at the people that I work with, I won't say they're all the smartest people in the world, but they're very smart people looking to achieve outcomes. And so one of the things that they're looking at is what has the most favorable pay structure. And it's certainly one of the things that I looked at coming up. So carried interest absolutely contributes to the success of the industry.
So let's suppose you pick a money manager, and the first quarter they're not so good, the second quarter not so good. At what point do you say you're fired?
2 quarters is obviously too short. This is long, I guess a longer answer, but style drift, and then I always tell people you got to have a great first year, right?
Okay. Suppose I come to you and say, I love cryptocurrencies. I want to invest my $1 billion in various cryptocurrencies. Would you invest in cryptocurrencies for somebody?
We don't, and my reasons are the following. S&P 500 goes down. Yesterday it was less than 2%. You got the President of the United States on TV talking about it. S&P 500 goes down 10%. Everybody is on TV around the world. Stay calm. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Cryptocurrency goes down 50%. Secretary of Treasury says, "We told you so." And so, that shows kind of the animosity. And crypto is still so small, it can be crushed. Half of American households own stocks. We went through the financial crisis. We saw that the federal government bought equity in banks. So equity now is so critical to the financial system. So in the next crisis, I know equity is coming out the other side. I don't know what's going to happen to crypto.
So there are a lot of wealth managers, and let's suppose I'm unsophisticated, I don't know, can't pick one from another. Why would I pick UBS? Why are you better than all the other people? There's a couple of things. First, you may have different wealth managers. We're super international. We've been in Asia for 60 years. So if you want investors in Asia or you want to invest in Asia, we have a much larger footprint of global investing. And then the second thing I'd say, and I experience this because I'm American, but I now live in Switzerland, they really do have a different mindset. It's a longer term mindset. Many of our clients have been with us over 50 years, and it still shows up. It surprises me, but there is still a cultural mindset difference. If Jay Powell called you tomorrow and said, I don't know what to do, should I lower interest rates a little bit more or not, what would you tell him?
I would say, do what you always do. Look at what the market's pricing in and just follow it.
Okay. And are you worried as an international investor about the debt of the United States? We have $36 trillion of debt. No evidence that we're going to pay it off anytime in my lifetime. Are you worried about that, or why are people not that worried about it?
Well, because with a reserve currency, we can fantasize that it doesn't matter. We are changing our asset allocation slowly over time to have more equity, because we think that, as inevitably happens, you're a student of history, the debt gets monetized and inflation, inflates it away.
I think we're out of time, but I've called this book The Highest Calling about the presidency. I previously said the highest calling was private equity. What do you think is a higher calling, the U.S. presidency or alternative investing?
Let's hope it's the presidency for all our sakes in the next 4 years.
Okay.
Thank you, David.
All right, thanks a lot.